This really is heartbreaking because I go to therapy.
Tonight, Black mothers in a life and death crisis. Our Turn to Terror team discovers new data revealing the tri-state region as one of the most dangerous places in America to give birth. Childbirth is typically one of the most exciting and joyous chapters in anyone's life. But a months-long News 12 investigation shows that far too many moms in our area, that experience is being marred by fear and tragedies that are mostly preventable. And because of the coronavirus, families that have been victims of neglect have had little recourse. Tara Rosenblum brings us Dying for Life.
It's not something I talk about often.
This really is heartbreaking.
Holding them until they take their last breath.
It almost killed me.
I almost bled out.
We started facing so much neglect.
Social determinants of health and the zip code where you live impacts the outcome of your life.
Why are these numbers so high and what are you doing about it?
We came in here expecting to plan a birth, and now we have to plan a funeral. You see all the cameras, all the lights. He's just so much fun to have around. He's the light of our life right now. You're probably sleepy, right? He looks just like her, especially in his eyes.
Who do you most blame for Amber's death?
She felt from the beginning that we were being neglected.
Bruce McIntyre claims his girlfriend's pregnancy was riddled with problems from the beginning that escalated during the pandemic, shortly after Amber's prenatal appointments went all virtual.
They just tried to make COVID an excuse to not pay attention to Amber.
Even though she felt extremely weak, he says it took weeks of complaining before a doctor agreed to an in-person visit.
She was always calling, trying to get some information, always voicing her concerns.
Less than a week later, the Black Puerto Rican new mom from the Bronx died alone right after an emergency C-section.
If Amber was a white woman, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
You feel that with absolute certainty?
Absolute certainty, absolute. And then I have white doctors who are coming out of Amber's room, tapping me on my shoulder, telling me, oh, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay. As they clock out and they get to go spend time with their families and go sleep next to their family. I don't have that luxury.
Amber's loss reigniting concerns over what is likely the single greatest racial disparity in our healthcare system today.
When it comes to maternal mortalities for Black women, there is a pretty well-known repetitive cycle. The failure to deliver valuable information that could save a life.
New data we obtained from the CDC shows Black mothers in America are roughly 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, and up to 12 times more likely in New York City, where women of color are dying at rates similar to third world nations like Kazakhstan and Iran.
It's very disgusting because New York alone is a melting pot.
Reginae Everett came dangerously close to adding her name to that list last summer.
Until this happened to me, I didn't even know it was like a thing. I almost died.
The married mom of 2 told us she knew early on in her pregnancy something wasn't right, but she claims it took more than a month to convince her doctors at the Montefiore Mount Vernon Family Health and Wellness Center to give her an ultrasound.
It wasn't until I started bleeding that they actually believed me. Like, okay, now you have to go to the hospital.
She survived. Her baby did not.
There was no way for the baby to pass, and I was internally clotting and bleeding.
Reginae believes, like Amber did, Her pain was brushed aside and she was treated differently because she's Black.
I really blame like these facilities and how they look at people.
And here's another part of the problem.
You cannot sue your doctor.
In the panicky early days of the pandemic, the state passed a law shielding hospitals and doctors from legal liability for health care provided during the pandemic, leaving moms like Regine.
What am I supposed to do?
No legal recourse. State Senator Alessandra Biaggi co-sponsored the bill that repealed the controversial clause and is now pushing for more funding for maternal mortality awareness.
This should not be happening in a state like New York. You know, we can't continue to say that we're the best at healthcare when all we have to do is look at the data. The data tells a story that is far greater than any rhetoric.
But the data also shows the maternal mortality crisis arrived long before the pandemic. So why? Why are Black moms more at risk of dying? While several studies over the years have pointed to institutionalized racial disparities in our healthcare system as factors, doctors are still struggling to tackle the crisis in a meaningful way.
Maternal mortality is multifaceted.
How much do you feel that institutional racism comes into play here?
I do think that it contributes substantially. Feeling like you're not listened to, that people don't see you.
Dr. Tara Shirazian, a gynecologist at NYU Langone Hospital, also runs a nonprofit group called Saving Mothers, whose mission is to end the crisis on a global scale.
You're doing great, just breathe.
We do have one of the worst racial disparities that I've seen out of any state. I believe it's a full-blown crisis. I believe that it doesn't get the attention that it needs, and it needs more money and policy, because really we can't lose women in pregnancy and in childbirth. It's unacceptable.
An out-of-control problem that transcends socioeconomic status. Just ask.
It's the little quiet, secret, inconvenient truth.
The first female mayor of Mount Vernon.
September 1994. I lost a daughter at 6.5 months. I almost died delivering the placenta. So if someone who's educated and has good medical coverage can almost die, it was very real. The system is not equal.
The issue now on the radar of policymakers in Washington, with the U.S. Department of Health announcing a bold action plan pledging to reduce national maternal mortality by 50% within the next 3 years. Meanwhile, Amber's partner now pouring his heart into a foundation named after her, offering scholarships to pregnant women struggling to pay their insurance premiums.
We have to act fast because nobody should have to feel this pain that I'm going through. No father should have to go through this.
Because until we understand how a mom goes from tweeting about her health concerns to dying in just 4 days, it's impossible to understand how the healthcare system failed her.
No child should have to grow up without their mother.
Tara Rosenblum, News 12.